If a program prescribes you a set at a given RPE, it's expected that you should try and aim for that RPE as accurately as possible. Undershooting isn't the end of the world, but overshooting can cause you to be more fatigued than expected. But is overshooting that big of a deal? Well, this is what I think. Like with most things, it depends. Context matters with the situation. Here are some things that you want to consider. First thing is the nature of the RPE. One thing that's worth pointing out is that there is a difference between overshooting at an RPE 5 and hitting RPE 6 when compared to hitting RPE 10 when you're trying to aim for RPE 9. Fatigue gets exponentially higher the closer that you work towards failure. So when you are hitting a higher RPE, it's worth being a little bit more precise with your warm-ups and decision making. If you want more information on how to warm up to a RPE top set, check out the video in the description box below. And the next thing that you want to consider is where you are in your competition calendar. As you approach competition, however you like to peak and taper, competition prep blocks, or whatever you want to call it, fatigue management is going to be key. And as much as you want to know how much you have actually progressed well, it's important to stick with the plan to see how well the program has prepared you for that competition day. So avoiding overshooting is going to be key. Sometimes, if the block hasn't prepped you well, that's okay. What's worse is self-sabotaging by forcing a way to come up to force an outcome, which will leave you even more fatigued and way worse off for your competition day. And on top of that, you have no idea whether the original plan would have worked well. So by trusting the process and following through with the comp prep, you need to be okay with the fact that this comp prep may be suboptimal, because seeing the performance not go so well will inform you about the effectiveness of that original comp prep, which will ultimately help you inform future programming decisions. And the third thing that you want to consider is what your pattern of behavior is like. If you are someone who overshoots their RPE often and by a lot, then yeah, you can probably avoid overshooting by evaluating your decision making leading up to your top sets or working sets, especially if you're not getting the results that you want in training. And you can't blame it on the program, because if you overshoot often, then you're not really replicating the prescribed stimulus that's given to you at all. So if you are this person, first things first, have you got an objective process for choosing loads? Or are you plucking loads out of gut feel or belief? If you don't have an objective process, then you need to start here. If you do have an objective process, then your decision making and calculations need to be recalibrated, which moves me on to the fourth factor. If you're not used to overshooting your RPEs, or if you're a relatively newer lifter, overshooting here and there can be beneficial, because it's through these types of failures that you can learn to judge your RPE a little bit better. Additionally, it can sometimes be useful to see the immediate and medium-term effects of sudden overshooting your RPEs, as sometimes it tells us how much hitting certain RPEs can affect your fatigue ability. For instance, see how hitting a certain RPE can influence you for your back-off sets, or even see how one session influences another session. If you're someone who has never been exposed to a certain level of intensity, there's an unknown effect for this intensity. So if you overshoot towards that intensity, you may accidentally learn that you may benefit from experiencing this level of stimulus. If you do have a coach, you have to remember that your coach is likely going to be trying to do two things. Your coach is either trying to project what they believe to be the best stimulus for you for optimal progress, or they may be experimenting to see how you respond to a set stimulus. So if you constantly deviate from the stimulus, your coach is going to have a hard time having a good string of data to be able to judge what stimulus works best for you. Naturally, there may be week-to-week deviations in fatigue and externals from life, and this already creates some sort of background noise with regards to your readiness on a week-to-week basis. And your coach needs to have a string of really consistent data to judge the effectiveness of that training dose. And if you overshoot, you create even more volatility and background fatigue that may ruin not only your training week, but the subsequent following week or two. Consequentially, you're making it really hard for your coach to figure out what would work well for you. Ultimately, this is what it means to trust the process. So it's really your responsibility of an athlete to be patient and help the coach help you reach better training progress through gaining a better understanding of how well you respond to training. So I hope that makes sense. If you want to know more about stuff like this, hit the subscribe button so I know to focus more on this topic more, and I will see you guys on the next one.